Welcome back everyone, I'm Tyler with Leggari Products. This video is going to show you how to properly mix and apply our Glaze Coat Top Coat. It's a proprietary slow cure polyaspartic designed for top coat applications that lays out glass smooth, protecting surfaces from the harshest environments. It's 100% UV stable and will not discolor or amber from UV rays. When fully cured, it's harder than any epoxy surface on the market and can be applied interior or exterior without any issues.
I'm going to show you how to mix our new and improved Glaze Coat polyaspartic. This is one of the greatest polyaspartics on the market, zero VOCs, volatile organic compounds. I'm going to show you how to mix it. This is a 2-to-1 ratio, so 2 parts A to 1 part B. This is a 3-quart kit that will do about 50 square feet. So the first thing we want to do is dump the part A's into mixing container. Now, even though it is zero VOCs, there's nothing harmful being evaporated from this product. It does have a slight odor, so we recommend wearing a mask. Some people are more sensitive to smells, even paint smells. So if you don't know if you're sensitive to this type of smell yet, we recommend you just get a respirator and wear that. I'm just gonna leave this to drip out for a second. If you pour the containers over too fast, it runs the risk of getting caught up here in the handle. So just tip it over for a few seconds and then tip it back over just to make sure that those handles are drained out. And all we're trying to do is we're trying to wait for that stream to just kind of turn into a slow drip. We want to get as much of this out as we can. All right, I'm happy with that. Now we'll take the part B. Same thing, we'll just tip it up for a few seconds. So we're going to mix this up for about 1.5 minutes, moving a small paddle mixer up and down, and then we'll pour it into a new bucket, a new container, and mix it again for about 30 seconds. Okay, like I mentioned, I'm going to pour this into a brand new container. I'm going to scrape the sides. That ensures that none of the unmixed components will be on the sides of this second mixing bucket. We call it a secondary mixing container. Mix this again for about 30 seconds. And that's how you mix up our 3-quart kit of Glaze Coat polyaspartic.
So we're going to apply our top coat. I'm going to be showing you how to apply our Glaze Coat polyaspartic top coat. It's zero VOCs, but does have an odor. I'm sure Tim explained that during mixing. So I am going to be wearing a mask, and I'll kind of show you some options how to apply it. So what I have here is a foam roller, and you still, even though it's foam, you want to de-shed it. Because once you pull these foam things out, you can do this and you'll see little furs falling off. So always de-shed rollers, right? Foam, nap, doesn't matter. Always de-shed them. And then I got a paintbrush so I can brush in my edges when I'm done. And you can, my favorite way to apply it is using just a Bondo squeegee. This is an HDX one, but similar to Bondo. It's just a flat squeegee. You can get them at almost any home improvement store. This one came with 3 packs, so I'll probably use the big one just so I can go a little faster. And we'll save these for something else. And then before I start to apply it, if I have any imperfections in the surface, maybe a bug or some debris got in it, I can lightly sand that with 220 grit. You don't have to sand the whole thing if you do it within 24 hours. If you go beyond that, you really need to scuff the surface up with 220 grit, really light. And anytime you're sanding maybe your corners or your faces, you want to really be light. You don't want to do a palm sander on these. You can do a palm sander on the top, but I always recommend doing the faces and corners by hand. Like you can see here, I just cut some drips off and it kind of lumpy at the bottom from cutting them. So I'll just take 220 grit and we'll just sand that in. Just like so. And then you're obviously gonna wanna clean that. So I like to use just denatured alcohol and a rag and get that nice and clean wherever you sand. So the best way to check for imperfections on the surface is run your hand across it. You're gonna feel it faster and sooner than you can see it. You might look at it one angle and not see it, go to another angle and you'll see it. So just run your hand across the counters, whatever you're coating, and you'll be able to tell if there's debris or anything in the surface that you can lightly sand. And when sanding by hand, I always like to do circle motions, don't go back and forth. That'll just gouge out really deeper scratches that we don't want. So circle motions or palm sander on the top. But that's about it before you apply your top coat. Make sure the counters are how you want them, get all the imperfections out, and then apply the top coat. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna put my mask on. I'm gonna pour probably 2 beads down here, and the glaze coat's enough to do 50 square feet, so I need to make it go on all the counters. So I'll do 2 beads here because we have a wider island. These are shorter, so I'll do 1 bead down the middle everywhere else, and then I'll start moving that stuff around with the squeegee, and then once I get it relatively leveled out everywhere, I'll take the roller and start rolling the top, evening everything out, hitting my edges, and then if I need to, I can take the brush and finalize my faces. So I'll kind of show you that process. So when I pour my beads out, I want to get it even width. So what I'm going to do now, I have a little left. I'll go in and fill in any skinny spots that I have out here. These are pretty close, but what I'm looking for is when this kind of starts to level out, I have an even thickness all the way down. So what I'm going to do is, like I said, I'm just going to start filling in any of the thinner spots and not the thicker spots. So next step, we're gonna take our squeegee and I'm just gonna start flattening this off. Just go up one way and back the next. This will make it go a lot faster for you than trying to roll this out. Notice how I'm holding at a low angle. So I'm always leaving product behind. And I'm not trying to get it off my edges yet. Just get it all over the top. And we'll do our edges last. So there's one way. That's probably my favorite way. It's fast. The other option is you guys can get some notch trowels. They sell these at Lowe's, Home Depot, QLT, Marshalltown, and we use the 3/16 thickness. So I can take that and start moving this around. Again, it's gonna make it really quick as well. All we're trying to do right now is spread this stuff out relatively even, and then we're gonna roll it. Again, like I said before, I like the Bondo squeegee. It's fast, easily break hard epoxy off it and clean it and use it multiple times. And you guys can see bubbles pop themselves in our polyaspartics as well. Okay, so that's pretty much evened out. Get a little bit down on this end. So what I'm going to do is just continue squeegeeing out all the resin, and then I'll get my roller out and we'll start rolling it out and hitting our edges. All right, so everything's kind of thinned out for us, moved around quickly, and that's a lot faster doing that than trying to roll everything out. So now we're going to take our foam roller, make sure nothing's flying off of it, and again, I've already de-shedded it. Looks like we got everything that's going to come off. And all we're going to do, start out where it's kind of thicker, start to get this thing soaked up. It's always going to be thicker out in the middle versus your edges, so I like to start out in the middle, rolling it out, starting to get this foam roller soaked up. And then we'll just go edge to edge, bringing that right to our corners, just back and forth. Notice my roller is quiet, doesn't sound sticky. If it was making a sticky sound, that would mean you have a thin spot and you need to push a little more resin there. I'm really not applying any pressure, just kind of letting it glide on the surface. And this will help even everything out. And I'm going to go both ways, so basically cross rolling the counters, making sure every spot on this top has been hit so it can lay out like glass smooth. Now that the top's rolled, I'm making it go right to the top corner, and it will start to run over our edges at this point. Now that's done, now we're going to hit the faces, and it's going to sound sticky. Roll it on the top, roll it on the face, make sure you get that top corner. We want to get it to where it doesn't sound sticky. Now we're going to roll another spot, And we'll just continue this throughout the rest of the counters. Edges are all coated. I'm gonna do one final pass because again, we kind of agitated that top area. This is gonna help level it all out. It would anyways, but this will just kind of speed up that process of it leveling out. And then on the rest of the counters, I'm gonna show you a faster way to do your edges by pushing a little product over that edge. And you can do whatever you're more comfortable with. So again, we'll start just by rolling everything out. Making sure it's got a good even coat. There's no sticky spots, there's no missed spots, which this side feels really good. Notice how my roller's quiet. If you have a thin spot, it sounds like this. That means you got a thin spot, get some resin in that area and roll it out. All right, so this is how we do our edges faster. So we're gonna apply a little pressure, push some product to that edge to get it to flow over, and you'll see how much faster we can do these edges. All right, so now last thing, just roll the top out. Again, we're gonna help level that out from pushing product around. Because if you look at our island we first did, it's just laid out like glass. Looks absolutely beautiful. Didn't have to spray anything on it, didn't have to torch it, nothing. So I'll just finish rolling this out. So now everything's basically done. I want to go around, make sure I don't have any mist spots on the edges. Like if you come over here, you'll notice we have some spots that aren't hit on the bottom, right? We don't want to assume that's going to level out and fill in. We're going to go around and hit those. We got some debris on the edge there. I'm going to pull that out and then roll that off. So now I'm just going to go around real quick, make sure there's no mist spots. And we've already done this on the top, so the top should be good. So we had a bunch of spots right there that were missed. That's the stuff we're looking for. All right, so I'm gonna set the roller in the bucket instead of on the ground. I don't wanna get a bunch of stuff on it just in case I find something else. And what we can do now, I'll grab a little razor blade, and we got a chunk in the resin here. Couple things here. I mean, we're probably going to get some debris in here because we're in a big warehouse, but I can pick a lot of this out right now and it'll be okay. So I'll kind of show you how we do that. All right, I got a razor blade. You can use toothpicks, work really good, and even old toothbrushes work really good. They actually get any hairs out real quick. They cling to the toothbrushes, works awesome. But we usually just use a razor blade, sharp object. So what I'm going to do, I don't know if you guys can see it, but it's right here. You kind of see when I pull it out, it's a hair. There it is. I don't know if you can see that or not. So sitting on the surface, so we're gonna pull those out. And you wanna get at different angles, right? Like it looks, I wouldn't have been able to see it from here, but if I come over here, depending on how the light hits it, I would have been able to see it. So there's another one right over here that I can't even see from here. So looks like another little hair. Could be from me, who knows. So that's what I'll do. I'll go around, I'll pick out any debris, anything that's landed in the surface. Make sure I'm looking at different angles as I'm going around. Just making sure I don't miss anything. And then we're gonna wanna scrape the drips because I don't wanna have to sand this. So I'm gonna wind up scraping the drips just like we showed you when we did the actual epoxy pour. Same thing, when it gets sticky, we wanna use a sharp object, something like a putty knife, something skinny, so we can just shave that off instead of having it build up on a paint stick or something. So yeah, I'll kinda go around, just scrape it real quick, show you guys what that looks like. Again, it's still fluid, so it's gonna wind up scraping really easily. You can see it's just gonna start falling off that paint stick. All right, so that's how you apply the glaze coat. So make sure you kind of babysit those edges, make sure you don't get any runs, scrape them off, scrape the drips off. If you guys aren't able to get the drips all the way off, you can usually cut them the next day with the razor blade, or you can sand them with 80 grit palm sander, knock those off flat, and then you should be good. But it's always nice to do your final coat and not have to sand. So I showed you guys a few options how to apply it with the Bondo squeegee, the notch squeegee, the roller. The best way to do it, the flat Bondo squeegee, right? It's not gonna induce a bunch of air because when you're using the notch squeegees, I don't know if you guys seen it, all those scrapes, trapped a little air in there. They obviously popped on their own, but if you're longer in the applying process and it starts getting stickier, those might not pop themselves. So if you guys ever have issues with you see some bubbling, do a denatured alcohol mist over the surface and that'll help fizzle the top, release those bubbles. But I do recommend always using a foam roller. Don't use a 3/8 snap roller when you're doing our glaze coat with the hairs. you're gonna wind up getting hairs shedding in it, no matter how good a roller you get or how good you de-shed it. Foam roller, de-shed the foam roller, kind of brush it off with your hands, get any loose stuff off that foam roller, and then when you start with that foam roller, start where there's some are thick. If you start where it's really thin, it's gonna wanna pull any of the fibers off of that roller, but if you can get it soaked up with the resin, it's gonna help keep all that on the roller. So just keep that in mind. When you guys are using our white UV resin and you sand and you go to clean, vacuum it good and clean it with just a damp, wet rag and then let that dry, because if you use denatured alcohol, isopropyl to clean our white UV resin, it will become a little tacky, which doesn't matter, but if you're using a rag or something, it's gonna pull hairs off that rag and it's gonna be in your counter and it's gonna mess up the glaze coat from leveling out and being glass smooth. So just keep that in mind. Anytime you're going over white UV resin and you need to sand and clean it, just do it with a damp, wet rag. That way it doesn't make the surface sticky and pull those hairs off. If it's epoxy, it's not gonna be sticky. You can sand, use denatured alcohol, isopropyl or whatever, or you can also clean with water. Just make sure it's dried out completely before you apply our glaze coat on there. If you guys are doing this inside a house, you wanna contain that smell, like say a kitchen, just plastic off your doors going into the kitchen, tight seal with tape, and that'll contain that smell in that area. Maybe crack a window to get some airflow, and that'll help ventilate it, because you don't want that to go throughout the house, stuff like that. Make sure you wear a mask, and we'll show you guys what this looks like when it's done. Once you've applied your glaze coat, you'll want to wait 48 hours before installing your sink or setting anything on the surface. You can start using your countertops within 48 to 72 hours if installed at room temps. After 7 days, it will be fully cured and at its hardest point. Even though it's rated for high heat, we recommend using hot pads when setting hot items on the surface and cutting boards when cutting.